That morning in the hillside town of Casio, I woke before the sun and lay still, listening to the wind slide through the grass roofs. For the first time in many days, my chest felt light. I believed, truly believed, that this might be the day I finally belonged. I had been married to Siko for 1 year now, 1 full year of trying to be gentle, trying to be useful, trying to be loved. I slipped from the mat, washed my face with cool water, and began folding clothes one slow piece at a time. A small song escaped my lips without thinking, the kind my mother used to sing when life was kind. His mother Deborah had barely spoken to me in days. No insults, no cold stares, just silence. And in that quiet I found hope. Silence felt soft. Silence felt like peace trying to grow. As I stacked the clean shirts, I caught myself smiling for no reason. I imagined Deborah calling me to share tea. I imagined her asking about my day. I imagined Siko walking in and smiling at me the way he did when we first met by the river in Lurana. The air felt warmer. The light through the window felt gentle on my skin. I told myself that things can change, that people soften, that one good morning can open a new door. I had no idea how fragile that hope was, how quickly a heart can rise, and how fast it can fall. By midday the house in the red hills of Samira felt heavy with heat, the kind that makes every sound louder and every breath slow. I was in the back room rinsing rice when the door burst open so hard it hit the wall. Tavari stood there, her face tight, her eyes sharp like broken glass. Before I could even greet her, the words fell out fast and wild. She said I was rude, that I had no respect, that I was turning her son, Liko, against his own blood. She said I was planning things behind her back, evil things she could not even name. Her voice rose and fell like drums in a storm. My hands went still in the water. I felt small, like a child caught doing something wrong without knowing what it was. I looked at Liko. He stood near the door, his shoulders stiff, his eyes fixed on the floor. He did not say my name. He did not say stop. The silence from him hurt more than her shouting. I tried to speak. I said I loved him. I said I had never turned him against anyone. I said I only wanted peace in this house. My words fell into the room and died there. Tavari laughed once, short and sharp like a slap. She said my tears were lies and my soft voice was a trick. The walls felt like they were closing in. I could hear neighbors outside in the courtyard of Nyanda, their low voices mixing with the sound of cooking fires and distant children's laughter, as if life was going on without knowing my world was breaking open. I took a step toward Liko, hoping my eyes would reach him even if my words could not. I remembered the way he once laughed with me by the river in Zermo, the way he had splashed water on my face and said my laugh was too loud for such a quiet place. I remembered how safe his hand felt around mine. Now his hand hung at his side, empty. Tavari moved closer to me, her finger pointing at my chest. She said I had poisoned her son's mind. She said I came into her home with a clean face and a dirty heart. My knees shook, not from fear of her, but from the sudden loss of the life I thought I had built. I tried one last time to explain, my voice cracking like dry wood. I said I had no plans, no tricks, no secret dreams except to be part of this family. Liko finally lifted his head, but when his eyes met mine, they were full of confusion, not care. He whispered that maybe I should just be quiet for a while. That was the moment something inside me slipped loose. The room felt far away. Even Tavari's voice turned into a dull echo. I saw myself from outside, a woman standing in borrowed space, holding a life that was no longer hers. And yet, in the middle of that shock and pain, I felt a strange stillness grow. It was small, like the first light before dawn, but it was real. I did not know what would happen next. I only knew that the way they saw me did not change the truth of who I was. And that quiet knowing held me up when nothing else did. It happened so fast that at first I thought I was dreaming, the kind of bad dream where your feet will not move. One moment I was standing in the small front room of the house in Kairma, my ears still ringing from harsh words, and the next moment the door flew open and my dresses were in the air. One by one, they sailed past me like wounded birds. My blue work dress, my soft white scarf, the shoes I wore on my wedding day, all thrown into the bright dust outside. Tavari did not look at me when she did it. Her face was hard and far away, as if I was already gone. I rushed toward the door just as my school papers went flying too. The only proof of the girl I once was in the town of Serla, the girl who had dreams bigger than this house. The wind lifted the papers and spun them in the road like lost leaves. I stepped outside without thinking. The sun hit my face. The street was full of people now. Women with buckets stopped walking. Men leaned on their bicycles. Children stared with wide eyes. Someone gave a nervous little laugh, the kind people make when they do not know where to look. My knees went weak. I could feel the ground through the thin soles of my slippers. I bent down to pick up my clothes, my hands shaking so hard I could barely grab the fabric. Dust clung to everything. Each piece I lifted felt heavier than the last. I wanted to disappear into the earth and take my shame with me. I heard soft whispers move through the crowd like wind through dry grass. I heard my name once, then again. I did not look up. I was afraid that if I saw their faces, I would break open and never close again. From the doorway behind me, I felt Liko's presence without seeing him. He did not step forward. He did not call my name. The silence around him was louder than all the voices in the street. I kept picking up my life, one dusty piece at a time. My hands found the small red sweater he once bought me at the market in Daliko, laughing as he said the color was too bright for such a quiet woman. I remembered that laugh then, warm and sudden, and it cut through me like cold water. A tear dropped onto the sweater and I brushed it away quickly, embarrassed even by my own sorrow. An old woman from the next house stepped closer and quietly handed me one of my shoes. Her eyes were kind, but she said nothing. That kindness nearly made me cry again. I placed my things in a small pile by the road. I felt small as I stood beside it, like a child waiting for someone to come and decide her fate. I did not know where I would go. I only knew I could not stay. The dust kept rising with every passing footstep, and with each cloud of it, another piece of my old life seemed to drift away. Yet in the middle of that open shame, with all those eyes on me, I felt something strange and quiet grow inside my chest. I was standing in the street, broken and seen, but I was still standing. And for the first time that day, that felt like the beginning of something, not just the end. I stepped into the light like I was walking into another life, slow and unsure, my feet barely feeling the ground in the town of Marua. My things lay scattered around me, some in the dust, some against the low stone wall, as if a storm had passed through my story and left only pieces behind. I bent down and picked up a shirt, then a shoe, then a cracked photo frame. My hands shook so badly I had to stop and press them against my knees. It was not anger that made them shake. It was shock. I kept waiting for someone to say this was a mistake, that I should go back inside. When I looked up, I saw Jalen standing in the doorway. The man I had shared meals with. The man who once promised to never let me stand alone. His face was still. His mouth was closed. He did not move toward me. He did not move away. That silence was louder than all the shouting before it. It pressed on my chest and made it hard to breathe. I wanted him to say my name, even in anger. I would have taken anger over that empty quiet. I kept gathering my things, my body moving on its own while my heart felt left behind. The road in front of the house was dry and wide, leading out of Marua toward places I had never been. I dragged my old suitcase through the dust and sat down on it by the roadside. The metal was warm from the sun. I wrapped my arms around myself as if I could hold my life in place by doing that. People passed by slowly. A young boy kicked a stone and watched it roll near my feet. A woman with a basket of cassava slowed down and gave me a look full of questions but asked none. Somewhere far off, someone laughed, a light laugh, like life did not know what was happening to me. I thought of the town of Lorizo where I grew up, of the river that used to shine at sunset, of the way my friends and I used to race along the bank until our lungs burned, and we fell into the grass laughing. For a moment I almost laughed too, remembering how big the world once felt. The memory warmed me and hurt me at the same time. A tear slid down my cheek and fell into the dust. I did not wipe it away. I felt too tired to hide anything now. The door behind me stayed closed. I did not turn around again. I told myself that if Jalen wanted to speak, he would. Each second that passed made the truth heavier and also clearer. I was alone on that road. But as I sat there with nowhere to go and nothing certain waiting for me, a strange calm settled in my chest. The fear was still there, deep and cold, but it was no longer the only thing I felt. I felt the sun on my face. I felt the ground under my feet. I felt my breath come in and out. I was still here. Broken, yes. Lost, yes. But alive. And alive meant the road in front of me still led somewhere, even if I could not yet see where. I was still sitting on my suitcase at the edge of the road in the town of Cayardo when the sound reached us, low at first, like a bee trapped inside a jar. At first no one paid attention. The street was always full of noise, goats calling, children shouting, metal pots clashing. But this sound grew and grew until it pushed through everything else. A deep, smooth hum that did not belong to our dusty road. People began to turn their heads one by one. Even the boy who had been playing with stones froze. Then we saw them, two black cars rolling slowly into Cayardo like shadows with wheels. They were clean and shining, so dark they reflected the sky. The dust rose around them in soft brown clouds as they moved. Conversations died in the air. A woman carrying bananas stopped in the middle of the road. A man leaned forward on his bicycle, as if pulled by a string. I remember thinking they must be lost, that rich people like this did not come to small places like ours unless something had gone very wrong. My heart beat faster for no reason I could explain. I stood up without thinking, one hand still on my suitcase, the other pressed to my chest like I was afraid my heart might fall out. The cars stopped just a few steps away from me. The engines went quiet, and in that silence, the whole town seemed to hold its breath. The doors opened slowly, not in a hurry, and two men stepped out. Their shoes did not touch the dust like the rest of us. Their clothes were smooth and dark, their faces calm. One of them looked around, then his eyes landed on me. Not on the crowd, on me. My throat went dry. I took a small step back, almost tripping over my suitcase. For a second I felt like laughing from pure nerves, because the idea that anyone would come looking for me in a place like Cayardo felt impossible. The man walked closer, his steps slow and steady. I could hear my own breath. He said my name. He said it clearly like he had always known it. People around me murmured. I felt their eyes on my back like warm stones. I nodded without knowing why. He smiled gently and said they had come from the city of Lumiko. He said they had been looking for me for a long time. The world tilted a little. I looked behind me without meaning to at the closed door at the road that had just thrown me out like dust. Soft laughter escaped my lips, thin and strange. I said they must have the wrong person. He shook his head slowly, kindly. The other man stepped forward and held out a folded paper. My hands were shaking again as I took it. I did not open it yet. The dust still hung in the air. The town was silent in a way I had never felt before. For the first time since that morning, the pain in my chest paused, just for a breath. I did not know who they were or why they had come. I only knew that the road I thought had ended was about to bend in a way I never saw coming. The men stood in front of me with the dust still moving around their shoes, and one of them asked for me by my full name, slow and clear, like he was reading it from something important. I had not heard my full name spoken in so long that it felt strange in my ears. The sound of it made my chest tighten. Behind me, I felt the street shift. I did not have to turn to know that Soria had gone stiff in the doorway, her body sharp and frozen like dry wood. Canilo stepped out beside her, his face full of open confusion, his eyes moving from the men to me and back again like he was watching a story he did not understand. The man in front of me said they had come from the city of Neriko. Just hearing the name of that far place sent a small shiver through me. He said they were here to escort me. The word escort sounded too big for a girl sitting on a dusty suitcase in a broken moment of her life. People around us began to whisper. Someone laughed softly, unsure. I wanted to laugh too, because the whole thing felt like a mistake. I said they must be looking for someone else. The man smiled again and said my father's name. The sound of it hit me like a sudden wave, a name no one in this town ever said with respect, a name that had only lived quietly in my heart for years. My breath caught so hard it hurt. For a moment, the street disappeared, and I was a child again, running barefoot through the warm sand of Yumiko, my father lifting me onto his shoulders, his laugh loud and full as the river beside us. I remembered the last time I saw him, the dust on his clothes, the promise in his eyes that things would be okay even when I knew they might not be. The man said my father had left things in this world that still carried my name. Land, buildings, a company that moved people and goods across long roads. He said it had all been held in silence, waiting for me. The words moved through the air, but they did not feel real yet. I heard gasps behind me. I heard Saria make a small broken sound in her throat. Canilo took a slow step forward, as if the ground under his feet had changed without warning. He looked at me like he was seeing a stranger stand in my place. My hands were still shaking, but now they shook for a different reason. My heart felt too full and too empty at the same time. The man held out his hand and said they were ready when I was. I looked around at the faces that had watched my shame only minutes before. Some looked scared now. Some looked curious. Some looked soft with regret. I looked once at Saria, still standing in the doorway she had pushed me from. Her eyes could not meet mine. I looked at Canilo, and for a second I saw the boy I once loved, the one who laughed with me by the river in Nerku. Then that image faded, and all that was left was the space between us. I took a slow breath. The pain was still there, deep and real, but something else had stepped in beside it now. Not pride, not anger, just a quiet strength I did not know I carried. I picked up my suitcase and placed my hand in the waiting one. The street felt different under my feet as I took that step, like the ground itself was reminding me that even in dust, something new can rise. The man spoke again, slow and clear so everyone could hear, and his words fell into the street like stones into still water. He said my father had left land in the green hills of Bikora, buildings in the busy town of Zelimo, and a transport company that moved people across long, dusty roads from Kitala to Nurai. He said all of it had been placed under trustees after my father died, hidden and protected until I was found. He said they had been searching for me for years. The street shifted with sound at once. Soft gasps, sharp whispers. Names passed from mouth to mouth like sparks. I heard my own name float through the air in a way I had never heard it before, not as a joke, not as an insult, but as something heavy and full. Behind me, I heard Nyara's breath catch. When I turned, her face was pale, her mouth open like she wanted to speak but could not find the words. The same woman who had pushed my life into the dust now stood trembling in her doorway. Her voice cracked when she said my name, and that sound cut through me in a way I did not expect. Kilo stood beside her, his eyes wide, his whole face changed. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, not as a wife, not as a burden, but as a stranger he did not understand. The crowd leaned closer. People who had laughed earlier now stared in silence. Someone dropped a basket. Oranges rolled across the dirt, bright and sudden, like small suns at my feet. The man said they were here to transfer control to me today if I wished. The words sounded too big for the small street, too clean for the dust on my hands. My heart beat so hard it hurt. I thought of my father then, his wide smile, his quiet strength, the way he used to say that roots grow deep even when the ground is dry. I had lived all these years thinking he left me with nothing but memories. Now his life stood in front of me in the middle of a broken day. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. A soft laugh slipped out of my throat, thin and shaky, and a tear followed it down my cheek. Nyara took one step forward, then stopped. Her pride seemed to fight with her fear inside her chest. When she spoke, her voice was small. She said she did not know. I nodded. I believed her. Kilo opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. For a moment, I saw regret in his eyes, sharp and sudden. I did not hate him for it. I felt only a deep, tired sadness, like the end of a long road walked alone. Around us, the street had changed. Where there was once judgment, there was now careful silence. Where there was laughter, there was now watchful respect. I lifted my chin not because I felt proud, but because I felt steady. The truth had shifted the ground under all of us. I did not gain power because they said those things. I had carried it quietly the whole time without knowing. The man held out the papers again. My fingers were steady now when I reached for them. I looked once more at the house I had called mine, at the doorway where my life had been torn open. Then I looked at the road ahead, wide and bright under the sun. The dust still clung to my clothes. My heart still ached. But inside that ache, something warm had taken root. And this time it felt like it would grow. I did not shout, even though my chest was full of words. I did not throw anything back, even though my hands still shook. I folded my last dress with care and placed it inside the dark car as if I were packing for a simple trip, not leaving a life behind in the town of Sermi. The dust moved softly around my feet. The street was quiet now, too quiet, like everyone was holding their breath for me. Before I got in, I turned once to look at Jarrow standing near the door. His face was tired and lost, like he was still trying to understand how everything had slipped through his hands so fast. Then I looked at Mavira. Her eyes were wet, but her pride still stood tall between us like a wall. For a moment the past year moved through my heart in flashes, shared meals, small laughs, long silences, all tangled together. I felt the ache rise again, slow and deep. Then I looked forward. The road was open. The car door waited. I stepped inside. As the car moved, the street of Sermi grew smaller behind me. The dust rose and settled, just like everything else that day. My heart still hurt, yes, in that quiet way that stays after the loud pain is gone. But under that hurt something new had settled. Not anger, not pride, something firmer. I watched the hills stretch out ahead of us, green and wide, leading toward places I had only heard of in stories. For the first time in a long while, I let myself breathe without fear. I thought of my father, of all the years he had carried a future for me without my knowing. I thought of the girl I used to be in the town of Kurama, barefoot and laughing by the river, believing the world was endless. That girl was still inside me. I smiled without meaning to. I had not lost everything that day. The street tried to break me, but instead it showed me who I truly was. And that truth felt like a quiet light rising inside my chest.